Okay, so we are back at our Monday Night Mishlei shiur, and this is Mishlei Yud Gimel, which says "Besifsei navon timate chochmah v'shevet legev chasar leiv." Anyone at all want to try translating?
I can try.
Oh, thank you for volunteering, Mayan. I like that initiative. Go ahead.
With genius lips, you'll find wisdom.
Genius. That's a nice. I've never heard that as a translation of navon, but I really like it. Yeah. All right, go ahead.
And I'm not really sure what legev is, but.
Listen, I didn't hear what you said for timate chochmah. Just repeat it.
What?
I didn't hear what you said for timate chochmah.
Will be found wisdom, or you will find. And in a tribe of Gev, heart is missing.
Okay, good, valiant effort here. So let's actually just focus on the first half for 1 second, just to get all the nuances like we usually do. Oh, for those who are joining for the first time, I haven't looked at the list. For those who are joining for the first time, what we do is we translate the pasuk, and we do the minimalist commentaries. Then we list questions and problems. Then we try to come up with ideas, and then we look at the commentaries. So, anyone else want to take a stab? I like with genius lips. That's good also. But anyone else want to take a stab at the besifsei navon, just how you translate that phrase?
Could navon also be like wise?
Not wise, but close. There's another. Wise would be chacham, right?
Maybe discerning.
Okay, so discerning is Arsenal's favorite translation. Let's do this. Okay, in or on. Okay, bi is usually in or on. Mayan is technically correct. Also, it could be with. I'll put lips here. With the lips of the navon. So navon is if chacham is a person who has chochmah, who has wisdom. Navon is a person who has
genius.
Understanding.
Okay, yeah, bina, right? So bina, let's say, so in the lips of the navon. Okay, I'm going to put navon here. So navon, I like translating it as person of understanding. Our likes translating it as person of discernment. Okay, and we'll have to see which approach we take here. Okay, timatse chochmah. So Mayan, you were correct the first time you translated it. Wisdom will be found. Okay, not timtsa chochmah, but timatse chochmah. Is chochmah will be found. All right, the shevet. Now here, shevet does not mean tribe. What's the other meaning of shevet?
A staff.
Staff, right? Okay, so and a staff, or I'm going to actually use a different term. Okay, I'm going to use rod because I think that's carries a better connotation here. Legev chasar leiv, for the back of the one who lacks a heart. Okay, so in, on, or with the lips of the navon, wisdom will be found, and a rod for the back of one who I'll say this, of the chasar leiv. Okay, chasar leiv, not chaser leiv. All right, one who lacks a heart. Okay, and remember in Tanakh, the word leiv means what? Other than heart. I mean, translate as heart, but it could also mean
mind.
Mind. Okay, so we're going to do heart and mind here because it's equal. Both, in Tanakh, I think, because they view the heart as the seat of knowledge. So then, or intelligence. Then it can mean in some cases heart, or some cases feeling, some cases mind. Okay, so let's do our next step that we usually do. We'll look at the minimalist commentators, and then we'll look at the English translations, and then we'll decide on what translations we'll use. So Mitzvah Sion says legev is leguf. Okay, so he says it is not back but body. Okay, so for the body of the chasar leiv. Okay, so that's Mitzvah Sion. Sadia Gaon translates chasar leiv as not one who lacks a heart or a mind, but one who lacks chasar hadas. Now, das could be mind, but it could also mean knowledge. Okay, so one who lacks knowledge. Targum Ksuv in the Aramaic translation says besifse desuchlasana tishka chachma. So that part's just a straight up translation. Vishivta lefigra, and a staff or a rod to the body. Dechasar rayana. Anyone know what rayana is? Not the musical artist.
Ideas.
Yeah, ideas, right? Ideas or thoughts. Okay, so yeah, I'm gonna say thought because I think that's more general than ideas. Okay, good. All right, so that is another possibility here. Okay, and then we'll go through our English one. So our scroll says, in the lips of an understanding one will be found wisdom, but a rod, and then they add in brackets, must be used on the back of one who lacks. And then our scroll always adds understanding heart. And I think the reason why is because certainly in Mishlei, I don't know if this is true for all of Tanakh, it will say, we know Mishlei tends to work in opposites, and it'll say navon in one half of the pasuk and chasar leiv in the other half of the pasuk. And there's a phrase in Tanakh that's used a lot, leiv lahavin, a heart to understand. So our scroll always plugs in the phrase understanding heart. Okay, so I don't think this is significantly different than ours, so I'm just going to go ahead and delete it. Living Nach says wisdom is found on the lips of the discerning. Then we have another discern, whoever said discernment earlier, but a rod on the body of the one who lacks sense. Okay, sense, I don't know how I feel about sense, but I'll add it anyway just to humor them. And an altar says, on the discerning man's lips is wisdom is found, but a rod for the back of the senseless. That's pretty much the same. Okay, so as you can see, we have, as usual, a pretty solid core translation with a lot of knobs to tweak in, on, with, understanding, discernment, body, back, heart, mind, knowledge, thought, sense. Okay, so again, for those who are here for the first time, we usually do, we ask questions and raise problems. We don't come up with answers yet. Okay, so answers will be at another phase. Right now, we got to get all the questions that we can get on the pasuk, whether they are major questions or minor questions. So let's have at it. What questions do you guys have?
Is this encouraging one to get violent against idiots?
Okay, so that's a good way to put it here. So I assume you're talking about a rod for the back of the chasar leiv. So let's ask this as a question, as a regular question. So how can we just translate it into a more broad question here?
Who's holding the rod, or is that a figurative rod?
Oh, okay, that's also a good question. Okay, so let's split that into two questions here. Let's go. What does a rod to the back mean? Okay, is this to be understood literally, which would be corporal punishment, or is this a figure of speech? Okay, and by the way, you know those who have learned Mishlei with me before, you guys know that my policy is we take every pasuk literally unless we're forced not to, right? Or unless there's strong reason not to. Taking something as a figure of speech is not the same thing. You could take something literally and have figures of speech. For example, like I remember once, someone might know what I'm talking about here. There's a Rashi on something in Shemos where it's one of the many pesukim where it says that God took us out of Egypt with a strong hand, with yad chazaka. And there's a Rashi there that says yad mamish lahakos, a literal hand to strike. Okay, and I remember reading a Devar Torah where someone wanted to use this as a proof that Rashi holds that God has an actual hand. Okay, because he says yad mamish. All right. And then I saw and then someone else responded and said, no. What it means is that there's a Chazal say that there were plagues that were not listed in the pesukim. So they say Rashi must hold that God had one of the plagues, which was he created a giant hand that slapped the Egyptians around. Okay, and I thought that's equally stupid. Okay, but just for a different reason. And then I remember we asked Rabbi Chait, Rav Pesach, Shifra's father, and I don't remember his answer, but I do remember what he said. He said, if I tell you that I built a house that's literally at the foot of the mountain, it does not mean that the mountain literally has feet. Okay, foot of the mountain is a figure of speech, and literally at the foot of the mountain means that it is right up against the foot of the mountain. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is you can say that a rod to the back is a figure of speech, and take it non-literally as a figure of speech, but that will not violate our typical approach to Mishlei of taking the pesukim as literally as possible. Okay, so that's what I mean of, is this corporal punishment or is it a figure of speech? And either way, what does it mean? Okay, yeah. All right, good. Then the second question that was asked was, who is administering this rod? Okay, whether it's literal or figurative, right? Is it the navon? Is it the person of understanding? Is he hitting them? Let's see. Is it the the navon is, I'm going to type this in Hebrew. I always forget if I do transliterations here, but whatever. Is it the navon? Is it someone else? Right? Is it the person, the audience of the pasuk? Okay, good. All right, what else?
Well,
Is
part of
there
that
a
question,
correlation between like the lips of the navon and then the body / back of the chasar lip?
Good call. Okay, good call. So, so let's do this. Okay, let's ask this in the broad way that we usually do, and then we'll break it down into chunks. Okay, so what is the relationship between the two halves of the pasuk? Okay, are they opposites or not? And then the particular thing is, for example, what is the relationship between the lips and the back? Okay, not your typical contrast there, right? Okay, good. And then I think it sounded
yeah,
like
quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
And this might be more of a translation question, and if I missed you covering this, then I apologize. But is the rod for sure something that's being administered, or could it be just like a stubborn back, like
I
a
think
stiff back?
So I think it cannot be used as, I'm open to other interpretations, but not a stiff back, because it is a rod for the back or to the back. So it has to be a
Meaning
separate
like there's for
object.
sure an action, like there it can't just be a description of a back.
I'd be open to saying it's an object somehow that is on the back, but I don't think it's a description of the back. Yeah.
Okay.
But the
I'm pretty
Lom-
sure that, and it is a very common phrase, like not just in Mishlei, but it's a very common phrase of for corporal punishment. That's why I just assumed that it's a figure of speech. Am I on?
I was just trying to like help the point of maybe it could be like a rod for the back of saying could the lamed be like a bishvil?
Yeah, right. It could be like serving the back. It could be physically upon the back, but I don't think it is a description of the back itself. And I didn't see any commentators who said that.
Rav Shneiwas?
Yeah.
It's a classic question. What's the difference between navon and chochmah in this?
Good. Okay, good. All right, so I'm gonna actually put this in order. So if you're taking notes, I hope I don't mess up your order, but whatever. All right. So okay, what is a navon? All right, and then another way of asking that is what is bina / tivuna, because that is the thing that makes him a navon. And then what is chochmah? Okay, or wisdom. Yeah. And
Okay.
yes.
In the same respect, like what's chasar leiv? What's unique to
Good.
that?
What is chasar leiv? And then now we can actually add to the opposites question, which is what is the relationship between the navon and the chasar leiv? And this is an example, by the way, of how even if you said that it's opposites, like we usually have, just because they're opposites doesn't mean that that they're direct opposites. And what I mean by that is you can have a navon who's someone who has bina, and a chasar leiv could just be like our school said, someone who lacks bina. Or you can say, no, there's a navon, and then there's like someone in between, and then there's someone who's on the far opposite extreme, So like, even though we say they're opposites, the question is like, how far are they? Again, or I think I've given this example before, because Ryan Moskowitz always gives this, is you could say in some contexts, the opposite of hot is cold. In other contexts, the opposite of hot is room temperature or warm, So opposite doesn't necessarily point to one specific thing. It could be a number of things. All right, good. What else?
Another
Why on the
Go.
okay, why on the lips of the navon? Like, is that important?
Okay, good. So why, where should I put this question here? Let's put it, okay. Let's break that down into two questions. Let's say, what does it mean that chochmah is found on the lips of the navon? Actually, all right, let's break that down to three questions. Okay, so first of all, what is this chochmah? Okay, and I don't, this is different than Shifra's question. Shifra's question was a definition question. What is chochmah in general? This is, what is this particular chochmah in the pasuk? So I'll clarify that. What is the chochmah in this particular context? Okay, then what is the, what is the relationship of the chochmah to the lips. And then anyone else have a way to ask a question on this phrase here, or on break this down to a third question?
You could have just said that chochmah is found with the navon without even mentioning lips.
Okay, good. So that to my mind, I'd say that is really covered in question B. Anything straight here is funny about the verb? Oh yeah.
I was gonna say like why the lips and not the tongue, because sometimes doesn't it have like
Okay.
the tongue or something?
Yeah. So let's say to the lips. So I'm going to add both those last points on here. What is the relationship of chochmah to lips? Why not ascribe it to another part of the mouth, or just ascribe it directly to the navon, right? Or say the navon speaks chochmah. Okay. So there could have been lots of ways to say it. Anyone else bothered by the term find or will be found?
Yeah, I have a question, but I don't really know how to articulate it. But I'm just
Sure.
gonna
Give it a try and we'll help.
Yeah. The first half of the sentence kind of sounds like it's speaking to someone else because it says the word found, because it's like
Yeah.
you will find wisdom, but the second one is like it sounds like punishment for the chasar leiv.
That's a
So
good point, right? Yeah. In fact, it almost sounds like an instruction, right? Like the first question that was asked here about like this is what you should do. So let's actually I realize now we should break this down into 4 questions, okay? Which is so the question I was thinking of. Well, what is okay? I don't want to get into answers yet, but did we have anyone recall a pasuk that we did that had the word finding in it? I know this is easy to check. I'm just too lazy. I feel like I might be repeating myself here, but in Mishlei, and then I suppose there's not just in Mishlei, but when you talk about finding, there's two ways to interpret it. I believe you can find this point in the Meiri in chapter 3, because there's a pasuk in chapter 3, I think, that says, "Ashrei adam matza chachma v'adam yafi ktuna." Happy is the man who has found chochmah. And I think the Meiri there says there's 2 ways you can interpret finding. One is happenstance. For example, we say like in Elu Mitzios, the found objects. So you stumble upon it and you find it. Okay. The other way you can interpret the word found is you're searching for it and that's why you find it. So like Eishes Chayil Miyimtza, that who can find a woman of valor, that you're searching for such a woman. So what is the meaning of found? Okay. Does it mean by happenstance or by planning? Okay. And then Schiffer's question is why and maybe Schiffer, you tell me, you said that you couldn't formulate the question clearly. Tell me if this is what you were getting at, or you're getting something else. Why does the first half of the pasuk speak passively about chochmah? I don't know if that's a different question. I don't even know if that's a different or the same question.
I don't even know.
Could you say that in the is when it says wisdom will be found, is the will be found applying to both halves or just the first half? Meaning, is he saying that you'll find a rod to the back of yeah.
I did see one commentary, I forgot who at the moment, it's at the bottom of the page, that said that it applies to both halves. So that's a good point also.
Okay, well, did that answer Shifra's question? It sounded like that's what.
Yeah,
that's
so I'm gonna convert it into a question since there are 2 ways to read it. Okay, does the passive phrasing apply to both halves? Yeah, I mean, maybe here's a different way to say what Shifra was saying is it's not telling you seek out wisdom from a person of understanding. It's like you'll find it there, and like the implication clearly seems to be that you should seek it out, but why is it phrasing it in such an indirect, non-sivoy, non-command manner?
Rabbi Shemus?
Yeah.
I don't know if this was asked yet. I know we discussed why specifically the lips, but it could. I mean, I feel like the pasuk could have been sufficient without the sifsei, without the lips.
Yeah.
Meaning a person could have an understanding person could find wisdom.
Right.
Like, why do you need the lips?
Yeah. I think that is included in here. What is the relationship of the chochmah to the lips? Why not describe it to another part of the mouth, or just describe it directly to the navon? That's what you're.
Okay,
saying,
fine.
right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, that's fine. All right. Anything else that we're missing here?
I have a question on
Yeah.
the fourth question on
Yeah.
something that you wrote. Could you explain again the happenstance definition of found? I just don't
Yeah.
remember.
It's like if you what's the there's a pasuk about Yosef that he found a man wandering in the field, or a man found him wandering in the field, right? So he didn't find him because he was looking for him, like he happened to find him, you know? Or again, to my mind, the strongest example is like the lost objects. Like when you find a lost object on the street, like you just find it, it's not because you were looking for something that was lost. It's you just happened to find it. So it really is like the opposite. In other words, you find stuff that you're searching for, or you find stuff that you weren't searching for. And what does it imply here? By the way, we're not getting into answers yet. Does it? Do either of those possibilities stand out as stronger to any of you? Like, does it sound more to you like happenstance, or more to you like by design? Like, if you're looking for chochmah, this is where you should find it.
I would say for
Sounds
sure
like-
happenstance.
I could see both ways.
For sure, happenstance.
I was
Is
gonna
that what
say
you
the
said?
opposite for sure that you're looking.
Yeah, I was gonna say for sure you're looking. So first of all, Ayala, what's your reason for saying for sure because you're looking?
Like it's in Mishlei, it's in a book about. It's like teaching you how to like look for like.
Yeah, in
chochmah
fact,
find.
so that's one argument. And by the way, if you remember our very first session so long ago, we did Sadigon's intro to Mishlei, and I mentioned to you that Sadigon has nicknames for all the books that he writes commentaries on, and his nickname for Mishlei is Sefer Drishas HaChochmah, the book of seeking wisdom. You know, so that's a good argument for Ayala. Anyone have another argument either way for why it's like you're looking for it or why it's you happen upon it?
I don't know how to isolate my rationale from the way I'm.
That's
gonna
fine. It could just be
try
an
to read
intuition.
it.
It could be a hunch.
Well, I mean, it's more how it clicks into how I'm trying to understand it. So.
Okay, fine, fair enough. Because I was gonna say, yeah.
I mean, my logic could be completely wrong, but I feel like usually it would be like yimtza or whatever with the yod, it'd be like you find it, and
Yeah.
temat would be like it will be found.
Yeah.
Is that true? That like the
I don't know pattern wise or structurally. I don't know enough grammar to say like what would be usual, but maybe you have the same intuition I do for this. I'm not sure, which is like, let me just think of an English example for a second. Like, like if I made the statement to you, like, let's say like you're job hunting and I say, that's where you'll find a job. Or that's where a job will be. No, actually, that doesn't work out. You can say it both ways. Yeah, I don't know, Maya. I'm not sure what's usual. Okay, I guess we'll leave it for when we interpret the pasuk.
Another,
Yeah, Gula.
sorry. I think another thing is that chochmah is not something that just falls out of the sky and like drops into your lap. You have to look for it. You have to
Well,
work hard for it.
interesting.
Yeah.
You know, interesting. You mentioned that. The reason why I'm smiling and saying interesting a lot is because the pasuk in Mishlei that I mentioned of Asher Adam Matzah Chochmah, the very first time I heard that pasuk was by Rabbi. It was at the YBT Smicha dinner of Rabbi Reuben, where Rabbi Reuben Goldberg got Smicha. He was one of the older guys in yeshiva during my time, and I remember his explanation was that you would think, like he was saying, what's the chiddush of the pasuk? Like, what new point is it teaching? And he said that I feel like what I'm about to say is going to resonate with everyone here. That he said, you know, people like to take credit for the wisdom that they have, you know, but if you think about it, like your connection to chochmah, to wisdom, it's something that is a matter of chance. And by chance, I don't mean that God is not involved. I mean that like if it weren't for the fact that you met a certain teacher at a certain critical point in your life, like I'm thinking about this with Rabbi Moskowitz. If I didn't meet Rabbi Moskowitz and he introduced me to Mishlei in 11th grade when I first started, who knows where I would be? Or if you hadn't been born to like the family that you were born in exactly like the the birth order or like something like that, then I'm saying that as an inside joke with Ariel. But there are a lot of these like little factors that if it weren't for that one little thing, then you would not be attached to chochmah, to wisdom in the same way that you are. So I think like, I'm not negating your point, Gula, but I'm saying that there is another way to say it, that like so much of our relationship with chochmah is determined by these things that we're not planned by us, whether it was like, hashgacha, or whether it was, just in line with the laws of nature or whatever, like that's, that's for a different discussion, but it is like, a happenstance find. Okay. Let's see if we have, do we have all the questions? Yeah. Ariel?
I mean, you asked, for like a possible rationale for, happenstance. I mean,
yeah.
And maybe you can say that, this could be depending on how you explain the pasuk, but maybe if you're more open-minded, if you're more, if you're open-minded, you can see more possible,
okay, that's a good point. Right. Right.
And it'll just come to you. You'll just find it.
Yeah. Remind me at the end of this year, if you remember, to revisit that point, because the Meiri's metaphorical explanation of the pasuk relies on that. Okay, so if you can remember.
Okay, yeah, because my intuition is, it's going into the answer stage right now, but that's where I'm headed.
Okay, so hold off on it for 1 second, because I think we are almost close to the answer stage. I think there's one more, or let's say 2 more questions we have to have. Now, I know these are like standard questions we always ask, but I feel like here we have to ask them because the answer is so unclear. Who is the pasuk for? Who is the audience of the pasuk? Okay, and the reason why I say that is like, if this is for someone who's seeking chochmah, so then why are we talking about using a rod on the backs of people who lack understanding? And if this is for a person who's like in that category where he might be like getting a rod on his back, so then like why are we talking about where to find chochmah? So I do feel like we need to ask that. Let me just put that here. So who is the audience of this pasuk? And then likewise, another question that we often ask is, what is the practical decision-making application of this pasuk? Especially given Schiffer's observation that it sounds like passive. It's not really like directing you to things.
I was about to ask about that. Do you think that Schiffer's question is a different question than like the audience one?
Well, it is different in the sense that it's seeking Schiffer's question is more about the wording and the style of the pasuk, and this is really more about who it's for, which could actually change like the substance of the message. And it's possible that the answer could like satisfy both, but I do think it's a different question.
I also have a question.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so I'm not really sure what's happening in like the second half of the pasuk, but what's the chiddush of the first half? Because it would seem almost intuitive that like a navon would speak with chochmah. So
okay, good.
What is it, adding something new, or is it just to contrast the second half, or like what's going on?
Okay, good.
There?
So let's say I'm going to say, what is you said the first half sounds like a chiddush? Or sorry, not like, sorry, not like
is chiddush. What is the first? What is the chiddush of the first half?
Yeah. So what is the chiddush? New insight in the first half. In fact, I'm going to actually append this to here. We'll just add this as a 5th question to just in our questions about the first half. Okay, what is the chiddush in the first half? This seems obvious, and then I like the way you asked the question, which is the only chiddush? Sorry, does the chiddush only come from the juxtaposition with the second half, or does it contain its own chiddush? That's a good methodological dichotomy there. Okay.
Also have a question that I think you have written, like it's about what is a navon and a chasar leiv.
Yeah.
But I guess I want to just phrase it in a way that just to see if it can elicit a literal response from you, because I'm curious. Is the thing that a navon has the thing that a chasar leiv is missing, or is it different?
Okay, good. So and you're right. That question is kind of scattered throughout several questions here, because you could also say that is in fact, I'm gonna put it here because this one's closer. What is the relationship between the navon and the chasar leiv? Does the thing that let's name the thing? Does the leiv that the chasar leiv lacks is the leiv that the chasar leiv lacks what makes the navon a navon? Sounds like a Sphinx type statement there. Okay. All right. So I think those are our main questions. We can always add more, but I think we should get into the answer phase now. And I don't think, you know what I'll do? I've never thought of doing this before. I'm just going to paste the pasuk into the chat, which I can't seem to do. Why is the chat not showing up? Give me 1 second. Stop share. Chat. Oh, the alignment's all off, but whatever. Okay, fine. So I'm gonna put that there. That way we can you can look at it at your as you see fit, and then we can try to get everything on one page with the questions. Okay, give me 1 second here. Let me hide the floating panel. And here we go. Okay. Yeah, can't get them all. All right. So what do you say? Anyone have approaches? Oh, sorry. One methodology thing before we start. Where should we start? What do you think of the primary? Not primary. I shouldn't say primary. What do you think the initial question has to be that we tackle?
Also, are we doing the thinking minute?
Oh yes, thank you for reminding me. Thank you very much for reminding me. All right, let's do. In fact, this coincides with me getting a glass of water minute. Okay, so let's take a moment to think while I get a glass of water. Okay, I'll be right back. Okay, so where should we start?
I was thinking it's easiest to start with the audience.
Really interesting. Okay. Why? What makes you think it's? Can you articulate your intuition, or is it just intuition?
It might just be intuition, but I kind of think once you understand who the audience is, then you're able to figure out the specifics just because
Okay.
it'll apply to the audience.
Okay, good. So one possibility, it's interesting, look, this is why I ask these questions, because our minds can work in different ways. Schiffer's right that right now it feels like this could go in any different direction, but if you pinpoint an audience, that might shed light on the entire thing. Like, for example, let's say you say that the pasuk is aimed at fools, or I don't know, whatever, then that'll limit it and give us direction. The other way to, anyone have a different intuition?
Yeah, I was thinking that like I would want to define navon and chasar leiv first and like what
Yeah.
the difference would be. And
Right.
then I was it's not like an interpretation, at least I don't know if it'll even go anywhere. But I was just thinking that with the navon, because it's concentrated with the lips, and then that in contrast with like the body / the back, that I feel like lips could represent more of like not spirituality, but like I feel like that represents like, oh, like your mind, like you're thinking and you're expressing your thoughts. Whereas I feel like your body and like your back is a more like physical and like that type of approach.
Okay, I got the first part of what you said, which is that you think we should start with the navon and the chasar leiv. So let me just, my mind started thinking about that when you said it. Can you articulate why you think that is the place to start, as opposed to starting with the audience or something else?
Yeah, because I feel like in order to really understand the rest of the pasuk, you need to because I feel like those are the main points. Like those are the most, I guess, like stark differences in my opinion. So I feel like if you find out what he's really saying with those, then everything else would kind of like click into place.
Yeah, so I was thinking the same thing, that the navon and the chasar leiv are the main players, and not only that, but the navon, like I think we have to define navon, chasar leiv, and chochmah, because I think that those are the main elements, and like once you get that, then that will give direction to the pasuk. So again, I'm not trying to invalidate what Schiffer is saying. Like what Schiffer's approach was also also made sense, but you got to go with your intuition. And since this is my shiur now, since my mind went in the same direction as Rivki, focusing on the navon and the chasar leiv, let's start there. And in fact, let's just start with it wasn't exactly the same as Rivki. Let's start with the navon and the chochmah here. And I'm going to actually violate one of my rules, okay? My rule is get everything from the pasuk itself. and don't go to other stuff. Don't go to other things. However, I believe this is the first pasuk we've done that talks specifically about navon and chacham and or bina and chochmah. And because the definitions because it's technical jargon, I feel like it might be good of us to rely on the crutch of having a definition. Okay, so you don't have to do it this way, but I think for the purposes of our shiur, also just given the time constraint here, this might be the best way to start. So anyone have a working definition of difference between chochmah and bina? Because in Mishlei, it's pretty, yeah, Zach?
Well, I mean, I was just going to go with the classic, and it's something I was thinking about a little earlier, is I was wondering if, like, by the way he was phrasing it, he was putting it in a different prioritization than I have it naturally. Yeah. And I feel like maybe this is a Western way of thinking, I don't know, but I feel like wisdom is the highest form. And then there's understanding, and then there's knowledge. So like knowledge is like rote memorization, yeah. Google has a lot of knowledge, and they're, not even understanding the information it has. But like after you have information, you can understand it, you can discern it. And then wisdom is like, being able to extrapolate truths and ideas, and more broader understandings than just basic understanding of information.
Okay.
So,
yeah. So sorry. Did I interrupt
you? So basically, what I was saying, that was like how I would have explained it, before looking at this at all. I feel like he sort of switches, in my head, the placement of understanding and wisdom, and it almost seems like understanding is a higher level.
Yeah. So you're correct to pick on that with the way he's using it. And I will say that it is possible, like, to have, look, these are technical terms and you can understand them in different ways, but it seems undeniable that in Mishlei, then the order goes chochmah's the lowest, then bina, and then da'as. And there are pesukim. I actually didn't collect these ahead of time. Let me just see if I can find them really quickly just to prove it, so you don't have to accept it on authority. Give me 1 second to get it up here. Isaac, you could jump in and tell me where the second reference is if you want. The one that we did, or sorry, is this the one? No, it's not the one we did. Never mind. Sorry. Hold on. Okay, so one place. Yeah, that's the academic Chabad, correct. One place is in Mishlei Gimel. Where are we? Yeah, Gimel Yotes, which says Hashem b'chachma yasad aretz konin shemaim b'tvuna v'dato tehomos nivkau ushchachim yirafu tal, which means Hashem founded the earth with wisdom. He established the heavens with understanding. V'dato tehomos nivkau, with knowledge the depths were cleaved. Ushchachim yirafu tal, and the heavens dripped dew. Now, it's not so clear from there that that's the hierarchy, but the reason why I'm showing you that is because, hold on a second, Konin, there's another pasuk in Mishlei that uses the same thing. Sorry, I didn't draw this up ahead of time. So there's another pasuk which says here, B'chachma yibane bayis, uvispuna yiskonan, uv'da'as chadarim yimalu kol hon yakar v'na'im. So with wisdom, he builds a house. With understanding, he establishes it, and with knowledge, he fills the rooms with all forms of precious and pleasant wealth. Okay, but this is not the only proof. This is, again, undisputed in Mishlei that he holds that the order goes chochmah, then tevuna, and then da'as. But the question is, what are the definitions of these things? So this is what I want to show you. And again, this is cheating. Okay, I don't encourage this behavior, but for the expediency. And I'm also going to do another thing. And if you're on mute and you gasp, then that's fine. I'm going to quote Rashi on Mishlei. Okay, I don't usually do Rashi on Mishlei, but he's just, Rashi's actually giving pshat here. He's not like, going into crazy metaphor here. So in Mishlei, in the statement in the first 6 pesukim of Mishlei, that's where Shlomo states the purposes of the book, and he says that there are different purposes for different people. And one of the pesukim says, Yishma chacham Yosef lekach, a chacham will hear and he will increase his learning. The navon takbulos yikne, and the navon will acquire strategies. So this is what Rashi says. Yishma chacham hamashalim halalu. Chacham will listen to, will hear these parables. Yosef al chachmas, and he will increase his wisdom. Okay, lekach is limud, is learning. Now here's the definition. Chacham ze bal hashmua. A wise person, this is one who has heard knowledge or received knowledge. The navon, but an understanding person, mosif al yedias chacham, he increases or adds upon the knowledge that the wise person has. Sheyodea lahavin davar mitoch davar, because he knows how to understand one thing from another. Umosif al shmuaso, and he increases upon that which he has heard. So what, according to Rashi, what Shlomo is calling chochmah is like what Zach was calling knowledge, which is basically, I mean, it's knowledge that you receive. You don't even necessarily understand it. You just get knowledge from other people. So that's chochmah. And then bina or tvuna is derived knowledge that you derive on your own or that you come up with on your own. Okay. And another Rashi, which I'm going to quote, is from Devarim. This is actually on something that is talked about in this week's parsha, which is the appointment of judges. But in Devarim, there's a more complete list of the qualifications. So the pasuk says, "Havu lechem anashim chachamim unevonim v'yeduim l'shivtechem v'asim b'roshechem." Is get for yourselves men who are wise and understanding and known to their tribes, and place them at your heads. So Rashi quotes a sifra or sifri. I couldn't actually find it before shiur. And he says like this: "Nevonim is mevinim davar mitoch davar," is understanding one thing from another. Now he says, here's the mashal. Zohi shishal Arius es Rabbi Yossi. So this is what Arius, I don't know who Arius is. This is what he asked Rabbi Yossi. Ma bein chachamim lenevonim. What is the difference between chachamim and nevonim? People who have wisdom and people who have understanding. Chacham dome l'shulchani ashir. A chacham is comparable to a wealthy money changer. Okay, shulchani here means money changer. Kishemeviin lo dinarim liros. When they bring him coins to look at roed, and he looks at them, meaning, and he makes money. But when they don't bring him yoshiv v'tohed, then he will sit and be idle, or sit and he'll do nothing. Okay, navon dome l'shulchani tagar, but a navon is comparable to a merchant money changer. Kishemeviin liros, when they bring him coins, roed, then he looks at them. But when they don't bring him, hu mechazer, or maybe he goes out and brings them in himself. So just to put this in these terms here is the money changer who's sitting there and who's a chacham, he is dependent on other people bringing their business to him. So to a chacham is dependent on others to give knowledge to him, but he can't derive new knowledge on his own. But the merchant money changer, he certainly gets money from other people. He makes money off of other people, but when he doesn't have clients, he goes and makes money on his own. So to the navon, the person of understanding, when he doesn't have knowledge, then he takes the knowledge he already does have and derives new knowledge from it. Okay, so I'm open to that there are other ideas of chochmah and tvuna. It seems that this is pretty reliable in terms of being what Mishlei's idea is, that chochmah is received knowledge and tvuna is original insight that you get from your own, and that you build off from your chochmah. So let's work with that for the purposes of our ideas tonight. Okay, best we can. Okay, so. Yeah, any questions on that?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go.
You go ahead. Yeah.
Let's go y'all first, yeah.
Is it possible that you could have like navon not based on chochmah? Or
navon not based on chochmah?
Definitely.
Well, do you have an example in mind, or are you just asking like
let's say someone has like false facts or whatever, and based on that they're able to derive stuff, but like it's not true because the facts are not true.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. So you're harkening back to our last English lesson of induction and deduction, right? I would say that it is possible to derive things from that which is not chochmah, but I wouldn't call the result knowledge. Meaning that in order for it to be, meaning you could have, let me put it this way, maybe this will answer your question better. You can have the skill of a navon, and if the navon is working with false facts, I would still say he's engaging in the process of bina, and he still has the quality of bina, but I wouldn't call the stuff that results like knowledge because it's false.
So that just makes the pasuk even more weird, because it makes it like so much more obvious if navon like means that he has chochmah.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So now it almost sounds obvious. Yeah. Okay. And what were you gonna say?
Oh, I was going to ask, So why does it sounds like our pasuk is almost like downgrading the navon, because if like
Yeah.
bina is better than chochmah, yeah, so then why does it say as chochmah on his lips and why
Right.
not like bina if that's obviously
Okay.
better?
Good. So I think this, right. So this strengthens the pasuk in several ways. So like Ayala said, this makes it sound, the first half sound more obvious, but you could also say it sounds problematic, because what would you expect to find on the navon's lips? Tavuna, understanding, maybe, right? Like that's his thing, And where would you expect to find chochmah? You expected to find chochmah on the lips of the chacham, So I like that expression, downgrading it. Is it saying like you're getting the lower grade stuff from the navon's lips? That's what it sounds like. Yeah.
I mean, I kind of would maybe push back on that a little bit by saying like that's the natural order, meaning a navon is a person of understanding, and we're talking about a process maybe of getting there, but we're not like if their words are should be less than them probably, like they are talking a lower level so that they achieve a higher level. To me, it would be weird. Well, I guess to me it makes sense. Let's say, rather say it makes sense that a person of understanding is speaking is speaking knowledge, because that's how they arrive to their understanding.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So in other words, one thing we can say certainly is that you'll find chochmah there, because in order to get to become a navon, you have to have the chochmah. So you're not necessarily going to find the chochmah in someone who is. Well, I guess we can't contrast it with the chacham, but in other words, it's like necessary. He wouldn't be a navon if he didn't have chacham.
maybe actually contrasting to a chacham would be good, because a chacham is someone who sits who sits and listens to podcasts, but like is
plug-in podcast there, yeah.
But it's someone who's just listening to is just listening, But in order to transition that listening and to make it understanding, then you have to exercise that knowledge, that wisdom, and that's how you get to navon. Just to expect that navons have understanding and chochmah have knowledge, like meaning there's like a transition and connection between all of them, and I think that's why it makes sense to.
Okay, I hear that. I stopped sharing because I just want to find. I thought someone says that in Mefarshim, but I just don't want to. I don't want to show all the Mefarshim yet. Just give me 1 second here. I'm pretty sure I saw that. Unless I saw it and I didn't include it here.
Can I ask like a clarification, like while you're? Yeah. So on what you were just saying, like about like Zach, I feel like I have to address you.
Oh yeah, sorry. Are you talking to me or to Zach?
But anyone, I'm just gonna say. Okay, so are you basically saying that like I feel like at least how I interpreted what you were saying was that with understanding, even though it's the highest level, you don't speak understanding. Like you wouldn't say, oh, like yeah, she's speaking understanding. You would say like that is translated as wisdom. Like I feel like it's different forms. At least that's how I interpreted what you were saying.
Yeah, I guess I don't know if I would disagree with that. I have to think about that, but that wasn't what I was saying. Also, just a clarification, I think understanding is the second level. I think we were saying that wisdom is the bottom, understanding was the middle, and then knowledge was the top.
Right.
But here it's the it's the highest, because I don't think.
Yeah, here our pasuk is not talking about knowledge. Yeah.
Yeah, but what I was saying is not that it's different forms, but like. If I think of a good analogy in a few minutes, I'll share it. But
okay.
But basically, I'm saying that a person at understanding is achieving understanding by discussing the lower level, meaning they're discussing knowledge to achieve understanding.
Okay. All right. So let me try restating that, and then Rivki, you tell me if that answers if that answers your question. Is that when like let's take for example when scientists, let's say. The ideal scientist is someone who is a navon, because the scientist is taking facts and then trying to extrapolate or trying to arrive at a new theory. So if you look at what scientists are talking about, when they're engaged in the activity of science, they're not talking understanding. They're talking about the data, and then arriving at understanding. Is that first of all, is that what you're saying, Zach?
That was phenomenal. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Great example.
And Rivki, does that clarify like what is and is not being said?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, so that's one way you can take this pasuk, is that that's why you'll find chochmah on the lips of the navon. I'm going to give you another. Oh, by the way, I should tell you, I don't have an idea for this pasuk. Okay, I have two half ideas. So let me tell you one half idea right now, because we're on the first half, and then let's move collectively to the second half and see what we find there, and then we'll see where this leads. So I was thinking, what it means is, you will always find chochmah, or let's put it this way, I don't know about always. You're more likely to find chochmah on the lips of a navon than you are to find chochmah on the lips of a chacham. Now, why is that? Because a chacham is just someone who has a certain finite pool of knowledge, and maybe that's all he knows. Maybe you've exhausted all of that and he's told you everything he knows. But the navon is someone who generates new knowledge constantly. So you're always going to be able to find more knowledge from the navon than you are from the chacham, and I'll give you an example of this, and this one kind of hits close to home, but in the beginning of the pandemic, when everyone switched to Zoom, it was revealed that a lot of teachers, I think, who viewed themselves as navonim, as navon teachers, really were just chachamim in a certain sense, because what happened was, everyone had certain things that they thought worked as part of the intrinsic fabric of teaching. But then when everyone went to Zoom, you realize, oh, none of my tools work, so what happened is the teachers who were very creative were able to quickly engage in tavuna and derive new strategies for pandemic education. And the teachers who only had a limited amount of tools that they had received, those tools didn't work, and therefore they were stuck, and I think this will be true if you go into any field, is that or any field or any craft, which is that the people who are first starting out in the craft, or the people who are novices in the field, they are just relying on what they've been taught. But if you throw them into a new situation, they're at a loss. If they don't have a ready-made rule to apply, then they don't know what to do. Whereas the master will be able to think on his feet and use the principles that he already had to derive new principles. And so that's where you're really gonna find chochmah in a reliable way. Okay. Does that make sense before we move on?
Yes, Rabbi Shmuel. So
Yeah.
just to restate what you're saying, so I can just understand it really quickly. Sure. So you're basically saying that there are two types of people. There's one person, he has a lot of knowledge, as a plethora worth of knowledge, and he, that's all he has now. And then there's another individual who just has knowledge, but he also has the ability to come up with new ideas.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And let me just show you the Rabbeinu. I found afterwards, the Rabbeinu Yonah says, I think this is what I'm saying, but tell me if I'm projecting.
So basically just Bikias versus Ian.
That's one way to look at it. I don't want to necessarily equate the two, but Bikias versus Ian is an example. Yeah, Isaac, what were you gonna say?
Just clarifying about what Ariel asked. He said there's two types of people. We're really talking about two different personality characteristics, right?
Right.
And so a person can have them to a greater or lesser extent.
Yeah. It's a spectrum, and also you can be a navon in one area and a chacham in another area. The same individual could be a navon when it comes to real estate, and a chacham when it comes to poker or whatever. Okay, so I think this is what the Rabbeinu Yonah is saying for the first half. He says, "Navon hu hamevin davar mitok davar." So he's relying on he has our definition. A navon is one who understands one thing from another. Al kain timatze chachma kol hayom bisfasav. Therefore, you will find chachma all day in his lips. B'chol ha'inyanim hamizdamnim, in all matters that happen. Okay, and mizdamnim is chance. Okay, it happens. Even though he didn't learn them in a chochmah manner from someone else. Meaning, this is a person who can think on his feet and can derive new knowledge from whatever is around him. So you will always find chochmah there, even on things that he hasn't been formally taught. Okay, any questions on that first half before we go on? Let me just summarize the differences between the approaches we had. So Zach was saying that the reason why you'll find chochmah on the lips of the navon is because that's what he's talking about. Navon is primarily going to be talking about the facts, because he's interested in the facts so he can derive understanding from it. But what he's talking about is the facts. And what I'm saying is that you can rely on finding chochmah with the navon, because he's a font. I think those are the same word, of new knowledge. Whereas someone who's not a navon, you might just like exhaust all the knowledge that they have. You know, someone what was I gonna say? Someone when I was thinking about starting a podcast and YouTube channel, someone, and I was just gonna do Mishlei, you know, so someone made the comment, and I was smiling, I hope this doesn't come across as haughty, but someone made the comment, they said, be careful to not, like, if you're gonna start a podcast about Mishlei, make sure that like you have enough to last, and that you don't just like use up all of your ideas and like have 20 episodes and then run out, you know. And the reason why I'm laughing is because I know for a fact, like at what point in my Mishlei development that would have been true. Meaning there was a certain point where like I knew maybe like a couple dozen pesukim, and like if you ask me like here's a new pasuk, you know, then like I that's it. I don't know any more Mishlei. Like let's close up shop. You know, let's cancel shiur. But like eventually, you know, like with doing Mishlei, then I got to the point where I can, you know, I don't think I'm gonna run out. You know, so at least in Mishlei, then we got the tuna. Yeah, someone was gonna say something.
Yeah, I just wanted to maybe elaborate a little bit on what I meant in the first half. And I just wanted to also point out that the first thing that struck me when I saw this pasuk that I actually really like a lot is, not sure if you'll feel the same though, is the fact that he used lips, because I feel like we're so like mentally trained at this point to see lips as a sign of a fool.
Yes.
You know, fool of the lips is like so ingrained now. It's like anybody who just talks is just a fool. And now he's sort of saying, using lips again, but he's talking about a person of high stature, a person of understanding. And so the way I take it, and I really like love that, because it's like he's like catching you a little bit from like taking the idea of talking.
You're right. We had a lot of lips pesukim in this chapter.
So it's like, my thinking was that, meaning the way we took lips before meant that you just talk before you're like thinking, you know, you're just talking, and that's like a sign of being a fool. And I think what he's saying here now is, so I'm just going to address a few points to explain this first half, but he's addressing, like, in my mind, us, the audience, right? So he's just addressing the reader, like a regular person. And he's kind of saying, it's kind of instruction. It's a dual. It's like dual instructions. One is like a little bit how to be a navon, and two is where you'll where you'll be surrounded by wisdom if you seek it. And so, to me, a navon is a person. He's saying is a person who's loose with wisdom, so to speak. Meaning that when someone hears something, let's say they heard some knowledge, they don't just leave it in their brain forever and just like, okay, well, now I have a stack of, trivia that's great in case I'm playing a trivia game. They're actually gonna discuss it, they're gonna talk about it, they'll wonder about it out loud, and they'll constantly be talking about it. And that constant, regurgitation of information, that constant banter of knowledge is what will lead to a navon. And so as a layman, we can learn two things. One is, if I want to improve my understanding, then I need to wrestle with knowledge. I need to wrestle with facts, and that'll lead me to understanding. And I should do that without necessarily fully understanding it first, just talking it through, get it out there, wrestle with it before you fully got it. And that'll lead to understanding. And two is, if you want to be surrounded by wisdom, surround yourself with people who are like that, who are going to wrestle with knowledge and wisdom constantly, and you'll just find it on their lips.
Okay, three responses before I forget. Okay, so response number one is the first point you made about the lips being like the superficial, unthinking speech. So the Malbim does make that point, and which is that lips, again, you were right to assume that like I might not care about it, but again, look, my whole thing, just to repeat the methodology here, my whole thing is, there are these minor questions about the wording. If you can explain a main idea that like sheds light on why it uses those particular phrases, that's great, and I'm in favor of that. But I'm not going to lose sleep over why it says lips and not mouth. So in this case, I do think it contributes to the idea, which is that Malbim says lips are superficial speech, whereas let's say mouth or tongue are more like speech that's thought out. So that part I do like. Second thing is when Zach's taking this as how to become a navon, and saying that you have to be one of the traits of a navon is being willing to speak superficially or in a half-baked manner about like the ideas that you're talking about, and about like playing around with the chochmah, just to like talk it out, because that's how you arrive at navon. So that I agree with it in an idea, and I have a real example, which is this was the biggest mistake I made in my yeshiva years. When I was in Shifra's father's shiur, in his Gemara shiur, and our goal is really tavuna there, is we're trying to take the chochmah, the facts that we're getting from the Gemaras, and then come up with svara, which is conceptual theorizing, and my mistake, and I think this stemmed from my perfectionism, was I didn't want to say anything in shiur unless I had a theory that I had worked out all the problems with. Like I wanted to only present things that I considered to be perfected full ideas. So I did not venture half ideas. I didn't, say things that I was lacking confidence in. And I realized I realized years into the shiur that stunted my development, because what I should have done is, just express myself, and then that might have led either to more insight on my own part or more feedback from my Rebbe, and that would help me become a navon. So I think that is a big stumbling block that people, it's a form of, Chazal say lo habayish and lo made, someone who's ashamed will not learn, and that's one form of that type of bad busha, that type of bad shame, which is you're unwilling to venture half-baked ideas that you're not confident in. And what Shlomo's saying, according to Zach, is that's what makes you into a navon, and that's what the navon still does. Like if you're not willing to say ideas that might be wrong or that might not lead anywhere, then you're going to close off a lot of avenues that might lead to something good. So that's my second point. My third point is that I think it's a good working theory for that this pasuk is aimed at someone who wants to be a navon. And who would you think wants to be a navon? I think we have a name for such a person based on the discussion we've been having tonight.
Like a wise man.
Yeah, right. As someone who is a chacham, right? That's the order, is that you're a chacham, and then the chacham is going to want to get to the level of becoming a navon. So let's now, try to take the next step. I mean, I realize that our shiur is almost over, but here's the big challenge. What the heck does that have to do with the second half of the pasuk?
I already am working on that.
Good. I'm glad. And before you say it, I just want to ask whether this meets the standards for the first half, at least, whether this possibly meets the standards of Yael and Ayala, who were bothered by the fact that the first half doesn't seem like a chiddush. What do you guys say?
Yeah, I think once you say that it's like talking about someone who's like looking for a navon, I guess, whatever, then it does work.
Okay, good. And Yael?
Yeah, I was gonna say also, to me it definitely like adds meaning. Like it adds depth for sure, because I wouldn't necessarily just read that and like think that idea.
Okay, good. So we now have a chiddush from the first half. Okay, but now let's see if Zach can reel it in. Okay, go ahead, Zach. What do you think for the second half?
Okay. Also, before I go to the second half, I just want to reference a question you asked in the beginning, which is like, where do you think is the first thing we should start? Like, what's the first question we should answer? Yeah. And like, that was like an interesting like question to me, because I sort of feel like with any complicated problem, it's like, I don't know if you ever played with like puzzle boxes or anything before. Yeah. It's sort of like saying, what's the first panel you should move of this puzzle box? Well, it's the first panel you can move, like whatever you can find that you can find, like, Yeah. So it's like, in this case, it was a little bit the audience, a little bit like, what are we learning for the first half? But like that, I don't know if that's a fair.
No, that is, and I actually have a name for that. Is I call that looking for a foothold. Like with the rock climbing analogy.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Like anything that you can step on. Like when you think, how do I scale this wall? Like, you can't necessarily plot out the whole thing, but you could definitely know what you can step on, and then move from there.
Yeah, which maybe you could even, just be cute, is say that's a little bit what he's saying.
Yeah, right. You mean that's the talking about the chochmah with your lips.
Yeah. Okay, so trying to apply this to the second half. I actually think you helped me with this one by talking about using the analogy of like a professional and an expert versus like someone who's not an expert.
Yeah.
That kind of, because like it's clear that it's negative. It's clear that it's not that, like, you know, just being a chasar leiv isn't exactly the pleasant. But I think that in a way it's possible that he's applying chasar leiv to this chacham still, you know, or the audience member. You know, we could, I don't think that's important which one, but I'm just saying it could still even be a chacham if we wanted it to be. And the reason, and basically what he's saying is what you were saying about a professional is like, if you have knowledge and you're stopping at knowledge and you're not giving thought as to how to reapply that knowledge, then you're going to end up in situations where you can no longer use knowledge that could have been usable, which means it's going to cost you. It's going to be more painful. If you can't, like, let's say you learn how to pivot, just to be very, like you're a builder and you learn the concept of pivoting and leverage to, leverage is what I meant. Maybe pivot was not what I meant, but using leverage, which is a mechanical principle, to lift big things, and you learn how to do that with bricks, and now you need to lift cement, and you're not able to reapply, you know, leverage from bricks to leverage with cement, which really should be the same thing. Then you're gonna not use leverage and just use your back, so to speak, and that's going to be painful for you. And so I think that's kind of what he's saying is like, if you're not willing to venture out with knowledge and try to come up with understanding, you're going to eventually reach points where it's going to afflict you.
Okay, good. So let me quote one thing that just supports this, your explanation of the second half, and then I want to try restating the entire pasuk according to how you explained it and see if I understand it. So again, when I read this, I thought it was talking about corporal punishment. Okay, but look at what the Ralbag says. Just for this, I'll read the whole Ralbag, but I only want to focus on the second half. Where are you, Ralbag? Ralbag says, oops, sorry, hold on just one second here. Ralbag says, the sifsei navon, navon tim, I think he's saying, oh yeah, timate chach, no, I think he's saying timtza chochmah bispasav. The navon, you will find wisdom in his lips. V'hu hatov hanifla mikol hatovos. That's the best, that's the greatest good out of all of them. Kamosha kadam, as we've explained before. V'amnam, here is the part I wanted to focus on. Mishu chasar leiv, someone who is lacking a leiv, lo dai lo shehu nedar ze hatov. Not only will he be lacking that good, meaning the good of chochmah, about yidbak bo hara, but evil will cling to him, or evil will afflict him. V'hamakos legufo tamid, and there will be constant like afflictions to his body. Ki yazikuhu v'yakuhu hanashim mipnei mum pu'ulosav. That's funny. He says it's from people. People will harm him and strike him because of the blemish in his actions, uma'amarav, and in his words, hanifsadim, which are deficient, besibas chasron data, because of the lack of his knowledge. So again, I'm just quoting this to show that the rod to the back of fools is not necessarily a rod of punishment. It could just be you're going to get consequences from the fact that you're trying to move forward without lack of knowledge. And now to try to restate what Zach is saying. So according to Zach, the pasuk is really describing a crossroads that's faced by every chacham. Chacham is someone who has some knowledge. And the question is he going to overcome the shame of being willing to test out ideas in a half-baked manner by speaking about chochmah and risk being wrong, you know, or risk like making a mistake or whatever? If he does that, that's going to be the next step into the world of being a navon, because chochmah is reliable. If you're just relying on stuff that you already were taught, that's a very secure life, you know. But to become a navon is a creative thinker. A navon is going to have to risk being wrong and like making leaps that don't pan out. And if your ego can't take it, you know, then you're not going to be able to progress. And what's going to happen is you're going to lose. Not only will you like end your development and not get all the benefits that you would have gotten from becoming a navon, but you're going to suffer consequences that are going to be in the form of like afflictions or physical consequences, or like rabag consequences from people. And that is chasar leiv. That's someone who's like lacking a heart. And in fact, this is weird. I'm going to say this. First of all, is Is that a fair? Am I missing anything in your idea, Zach?
Sorry, I don't think so. I think you covered it. But I also, my mind wandered a bit at the end, so
That's fine.
I'm not sure I heard.
Did it wander in a way that because you thought of something else?
Not something that I'm gonna risk.
Nah, okay, fine. I'll risk something. Okay. And this we have to see.
Can you just explain that for a second? Just like I'm lost with this.
Okay, so in other words, like this is chochmah is knowledge that you receive from other people. So that's the first stage of everyone's development. Okay, is you're taught stuff from your teachers and then you follow it and you rely on it. All right, but then there comes a point where the next stage of your development is no longer relying on what other people tell you. It is becoming a navon, is becoming a creative thinker, becoming someone who derives his own knowledge. All right, in order to do that, that's risky business. You're going to have to risk speaking in ways that really might be superficial, that might be wrong, that might not lead you might not lead you anywhere, and that might make you look foolish. But that's every navon did that in order to become a navon, and every navon is willing to do that in his day-to-day practice. That's what it means that in the lips of the navon is chochmah, is he's always like playing around with chochmah in a superficial way. Okay. But if you're not willing to do that, that's what the pasuk is calling a chasar leiv. And the consequence of that is not only will you miss out on becoming a navon, not only will you miss out on the good that comes from applying tevuna, but you'll also get consequences, which is being referred to by being stricken on your back. Is that you'll suffer from the fact that you're trying to leverage, pivot, concrete metaphor in building and not succeeding.
So essentially, you're just saying that if you don't do that, then the consequences, you may harm yourself.
Yeah, if you are trying to, again, like let's use my example from before because I don't know what building, is that if you are a teacher who moved from live teaching to Zoom and you try to use all the same strategies that you use in your live classroom, thinking that it'll work for Zoom, and you're not willing to like experiment with new things, you're just going to fail. Like you're not going to be able to catch the kid who's on his phone like beneath the computer. You're not going to be able to like keep track of what everyone's doing all at once. It's just going to fail. And that's true in every area. Is if you stubbornly refuse to move past your received knowledge and stake out on your own and like try new things, then you're not going to become a navon, and you're going to get consequences.
And to bring this more practically, like that, I like the commentary you read to like help explain what I was saying in the second half. Is just like I was just using a very physical analogy, but I mean, if we take it more practically, just to life skills in general, human niceties, politeness, social skills, moral behavior, you're never gonna get enough information to cover every single situation. Right. So if you lack the skills to reapply how to treat someone correctly, then you're going to run into a situation where you're going to treat them incorrectly, thinking like, oh, well, I'm just following this fixed set of rules. And then that's going to lead to people being upset at you and cause you pain in your life.
Good. So let me just restate that in or provide a source for that, and then we'll officially end for tonight. And then, as always, I'll continue as long as people still have questions. But what Zach is talking about here is really addressed by the Ramban in Kedoshim Tihiu and Vasisa Hayasha V'Hatov. So the basic summary of the Ramban here is that the Torah cannot legislate perfection. It cannot legislate personal ethical perfection or interpersonal ethical perfection. It can give you general laws and it can give you cases, but no set of laws can cover all cases. So what you need to do, what Kedoshim Tihiu, you should be holy, is telling you, or Vasisa Hayasher V'Hatov, do what is upright and what is good, is take those principles and extend them to new particulars, lifnim mishur zadim, beyond the letter of the law. And you're going to need to figure out how to do that on your own. There's no way to legislate it. And in fact, I won't go into this rant, but I'll acknowledge that the rant exists, is that that's one of the big problems in Judaism, in modern Judaism and throughout our history, is people trying to legislate various forms of piety and perfection beyond halacha. There is such a thing as going beyond halacha, but you can't legislate it. Then that just ends up in either chomer creep, where you're just adding into halacha ad infinitum, or trying to take that which is dynamic, namely life, and cram it into prefab rigid rules, and that's not really how dynamic life works, you know. And so that is the next stage of development. All right, again, I don't want to hold people hostage, so we'll officially end for the shiur for tonight. And those who want to leave can leave, and those who want to continue discussing. And by the way, you know, my New York bedtime is like 9:30, but I'm in Seattle. I'm stuck in Seattle because of that blizzard. So I can go all night. But but yeah, all right, so let's stop here for today officially, and see you guys next time. And those who want to continue talking will continue talking.
Rabbi Shneimus?
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Two things. One, you wanted me to remind you about Amiri. And second,
yes, thanks.
Can I offer a different alternative? I mean, an alternative for the second half of the pasuk?
Yes, sure. Go ahead.
I don't know. There's something. To me, there's like not enough of a contrast between the first half of the pasuk and the second half of the pasuk.
Okay.
I don't know why. Maybe it's just still not clear to me, but I may have found another one.
Okay, and I also have the second half idea. So I want to run that by you after Ariel goes. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, fine. So there are three different. Okay, so there are two different types of people in the first half of the pasuk. There's the individual who has a plethora of knowledge, and then there's the individual who acts on his knowledge. He's utilizing his knowledge to come up with great ideas.
Yeah.
But maybe you could say there's a third guy, and that's an individual who is satisfied with the amount of knowledge he has, and he does not want to seek out more knowledge. It's like a spectrum.
And where's the third guy in the pasuk?
In the second half of the pasuk.
Oh, and so what's the rod on the back? Is that that yet,
the rod on the back is his stubbornness to look for more knowledge. I mean, he's satisfied with the lifestyle of not wanting to seek out more knowledge.
But what's that teaching us?
I mean, it's just showing us. It's just showing different types of people in different.
I mean, he has to be trying to meaning as we're reading this, there has to be something we can gain from that. So if he's just saying this person exists and that person exists, is he saying one is better, one is worse? Is he saying?
Well, I'm just saying that, hold on a minute. Okay, your question on me is, so what's the chiddush of that statement?
Yeah, right? Exactly. If you just want to say that he's describing someone, which fair because he is describing people, but if you want to just say that he's just describing people, then what is the thing we're taking out of it then?
And what does it have to do with a navon?
Yeah. So Ariel, why don't you think about those questions for now? Let me run by you the other half idea. So this idea, I'm not taking credit for. So I prepared for this year with an 11th grader named Avi, and he came up with this whole idea. So I'll tell you this part, and then I'll tell you what what's still lacking. Okay. So he said that the chochmah that we're referring to here, since the rod to the back is an expression of rebuke or of chastisement. So he said the chochmah that we're talking about is also chastisement. Okay, is also rebuke or criticism. So he said that the pasuk is basically talking about how you take rebuke. Okay, if you are a chacham and a navon rebukes you, you will take it as chochmah. But if you are a chasar leiv and a navon rebukes you, you'll take it personally. You'll take it as a rod to the back. And so that was his general approach to the pasuk, and I liked that approach. The thing that we didn't get a chance to finish preparing was, I don't know why you need a navon specifically in order to get this idea. Meaning, the same idea would work for rebuke from anyone. The chochmah I understand, and you see this, by the way, in just going back to our example of people learning crafts, is when a person is I feel like we talked about this in another pasuk, but let's say a person is starting off, I don't know, baking, or starting off with a sport or whatever, martial arts, and the teacher says, here's how you throw a punch, and he's like, well, I want to do it this way. Well, you're an idiot. I mean, lots and lots of experts have done this, and they've worked it out how to punch. Now, it's true that there is a certain point of development where you become a navon and then you innovate, you become a Bruce Lee who actually, shattered pre-existing styles and like came up with new stuff. But that's not what the beginner does, So the beginner who is criticized by his teacher for not following the rules of chochmah, and he treats it as though the teacher's picking on him, or treats it as though this is like a harsh reprimand, like that person is just not going to develop. You have to be receptive to the chochmah that comes from the navon in order to move. I still think that like what's bothering me is why emphasize navon, and the lips also is a little weird, but I like the general approach to the pasuk. So
wait, on that idea, can you just explain how you got rebuke like from the pasuk? I just don't see it.
Because shevet leiv is definitely rebuke. Is a rod to the back, like it's corporal punishment. So it must therefore he's just making the assumption that the whole pasuk is talking about about statements that are directed at you that you might take pain from, and that's rebuke. And by the way, that's the most common interpretation of all the mefarshim. Like for example, you'll see here Rashi says. Rashi says, when someone rebukes the navon, Meshiv lo, he responds, Chatasi, I sinned. David, Amar Lanasan Chatasi, like David said to Nasan. The shevet leiv ksilim of chasar leiv eno shemea ad shi'alake kamo paro. But the chasar leiv will not listen until he has to be stricken, stricken like paro. So. Or let's say you see here Radak shevet musar is he's giving, it's the rod of punishment, So
I was thinking of the makos for the second part of the pasuk, because specifically the makos were a way to try and teach paro lessons. Each one of the makos was, and so also we say in the Haggadah avata hake shinav for the Russia, right. So I was thinking like it's an educational method almost, that when somebody is just senseless, you got to knock some sense into them almost.
So that idea I accept, and I actually that idea appears a lot in Mishlei. Like for example, Miri quotes this pasuk, "Techas ge'ara b'mevin mehakos ksil mea," which means rebuke frightens the man of understanding. Mevin is just another word for navon, according to many. Techas ge'ara b'mevin, rebuke frightens the navon, mehakos ksil mea, more than striking a fool 100 times. And the idea there is obviously we don't resort to corporal punishment as an ideal, but the mavin can understand. If you give him like the idea in abstract, he can understand all the implications, and it'll frighten him when he realizes like the implications if he continues in this behavior. But someone who's stubborn like Paro, you might need to actually like strike him either with the consequences themselves or with artificial consequences like corporal punishment. So I that idea, there's a lot of ideas like that in Mishlei, and I accept that. I just can't figure out what finding chochmah on the lips of the navon. That seems to me to be too specific and subtle to just be saying that idea. That's where I ran out. Yeah, Isaac.
I actually have a thought about rebuke from a navon specifically.
Sure. So just tell me what rebuke from a navon or rebuke for a navon.
From a navon.
Okay, good. Yeah.
That when a navon, so I'd say when one type of I'd say excuse that a person has for not listening to rebuke is that the person doesn't really understand the situation, and he's saying something that doesn't apply to me.
Yeah.
So I'd say
that's a good point.
If you're getting a rebuke from a chacham, you might say, "Oh, he has a true principle, and it's true in general, but my situation is different."
Yeah, in fact, the what do you call it? According to what we said, it's not just that you might say that. It might be that the chacham is misapplying a principle, right? It might be that that he's misapplying a principle, and therefore he's wrong. I have to pause this for 1 second here and give an example that I actually have to give an example / ask a question here. Okay, pause recording. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So I think to answer Zach and Ayala's question about what does that have to do with the navon and what's the practical application, maybe you could say the contrast is like this: that you have an individual who uses his chochmah to explore, new ideas. But then you have an individual who is satisfied with the amount of knowledge he has and coming up with the ideas, but not looking for extra facts. And that also in itself is a harm.
Interesting.
Meaning you're saying that like the way to, meaning I guess it sounds like what you're adding to the equation is that it's not just about discussing facts you already have, but constantly pursuing new facts.
Exactly. For instance, there are so many areas in Gemara or in learning Chumash or, any in-depth, topic which requires a lot of facts. Actually, this happened with one of my quizzes recently. Like I felt we needed more facts to, go further an idea.
So this is all the proof to show why your chavrusa is wrong.
We stopped the recording. You might be listening to this. But I mean, the point is like, just because you have X amount of facts doesn't mean you're ready to come up with a svara. It's right. Just
So tell me how I agree with the phenomenon. Tell me how the rod to the back fits in.
You could come up with a really dumb svara, and that could hurt you. That's all I got. I didn't really think that far ahead, but
okay. Yeah, I mean, I hear. Okay, I definitely hear the first part, and I'd actually it's a good split off from the approach that Zach was taking in the sense that like you'll find chochmah on the lips of the navon, like the approach Zach was taking is that they're going to be talking about the facts. And like what you're saying is a different reason why he's going to be talking about the facts, which is he's going to be like looking for the right amount of facts or something like that,
Right, exactly. There are two ways to get navon, and that's through the proper process, and then and which will result in a good conclusion in a positive conclusion, and then it could result in a completely harmful negative conclusion.
So it seems like it kind of fits in with the framework, but you're just you're pulling in the point, which I think I like that point, which is that like seeking new facts might be a critical, whether it's skill or practice for becoming and staying a navon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think my only problem, I like the idea. I think my only problem with it is I'm not so keen on the rod to the back being like giving a bad svara or the results. I would need to be sold on that idea.
Right. Well, I could think about that more.
Yeah, but I hear the approach now. It's clearer than the first time you said it.
Right.
Yeah. And by the way, regarding the other meteorite point, Ariel, I don't think we can go into it right now. It is like I said, I could go all night, but I didn't mean that literally. That was a figure of speech. It's like a couple paragraphs to read. And it's like it's a whole different approach. So maybe some other time.
We could start it off next week.
Yeah, so start a separate Mishlei shiur where we only do metaphorical explanations. Keep this the literal one. Okay. Anything else before we stop?
Yeah, I'll let whoever else wanted to.
I was gonna say, is the separate Mishlei shiur a metaphor for something?
Oh no! Ricky, what were you gonna say?
Started.
Yeah.
So I actually do have a question. It's a little separate. Before I ask the question, I just wanted to follow up on the angle you were bringing up before with looking at it. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Of looking at it as like punishment. And so I was thinking that like you could take it, which I think is like from two perspectives. Like there's one like category of like how a person takes punishment, whether they take it that way or this way. And I think that was how the various points were brought up here. But you could technically flip that same concept and say how a person gives like a rebuke. You could say a navon gives rebuke by sharing wisdom. Versus
like
a chasar leiv gives rebuke by Okay,
that's very, very good, right? In other words, so it's addressed at the rebuke giver, and it's talking about how it has to be perceived as lips giving chochmah as opposed to someone beating you with the stick. Yeah, that's good. That's definitely good advice and a good interpretation of the pasuk. Okay, good. I like that.
Okay, great. So my question, which is now kind of moving a little bit away, is I'm just curious if you have, like, I have a suggestion if you don't have an immediate answer that I want to run by you, but we talked about wisdom and understanding and the relationship between the two. How in order to be let's say a man of understanding or a person of understanding, that they first have to deal with wisdom. They first have to deal with facts and wrestle with those facts, and that's what makes them become a person of understanding. So my question is,
there's an inside joke that I can't stop laughing about.
Okay, no worries.
It's getting my on. I'm not laughing at your idea.
No, it's fine. I was finding it amusing anyway.
Okay, yeah. I just had to move the Zoom thing, so I'm not seeing them. Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead. Okay. Start again.
Okay. I'll start it. So basically, we talked about we clarified wisdom and understanding, and we talked about the relationship between the two. We talked about in order to be a man of understanding or a person of understanding, you have to first deal with facts. You first have to deal with the wisdom, and that brings you to understanding.
Right.
Like we were talking about wrestling with facts and trying to reapply them, and that's what a person of understanding is. So my question is what is the relationship between understanding and das, or knowledge, or chochmah and das? Like what's that relationship look like?
So truthfully, the pasuk I quoted to you about with chochmah, a person builds a house. With understanding, he establishes it, and then with knowledge, he fills its rooms with all forms of precious wealth. That would be the pasuk to learn. That would really go into the connection between all three, and perhaps even the transition with all three. And in fact, I think Isaac, we earmarked that to maybe do one day. And I feel, and then the problem is there's a lot of stuff said about those terms and a lot of stuff written on it, and like it's a very intimidating thing. I feel like we can't get it from what we just did, but there are pesukim about it, and it's a big concept in Mishlei, because again, those are the three like operational terms of types of knowledge in Mishlei.
Can I make a tentative suggestion, and you tell me if it's barking up the wrong tree or not? So I'm wondering if we could apply the same relationship between wisdom and understanding to understanding and knowledge.
Okay.
Where we sort of say that there's practical application of facts, and then there's, let's say, general truths of understanding. Meaning, if you can have a meta truth and you can discover a meta truth, that would be more closer to the realm of knowledge versus just like reapplying something and you understand like the mechanics of something.
I that definitely rings true to me. And let me just think if what I'm about to say is relevant, or if it's just a second here. There was one of my Rebbeim, Rabbi Zucker, developed a method for teaching Gemara, and it involved 4 stages of training students. And he came up with a cutesy way to express the 4 levels. One was the first step is you have to learn to read the lines of Gemara. That's just reading and translating. Second step is to learn to read between the lines. That's understanding like the unstated premises and the logic of how it connects. Third level is learning behind the lines. That is what we call svara. That's like the conceptual underlying abstract definitions behind things. And then the 4th level is beyond the lines, where you're taking instead of working with the facts and arriving at the conceptual theory, you're taking conceptual theories and then arriving at like more abstract underlying ideas that like underlie the entire area, So like that's the real in the science analogy. I mean, that's what the real theoretical physicists do, of like unifying entire areas through deep things. The only thing I don't know about, and by the way, and this also fits in with another thing in Mishlei, which is sometimes it's called das, and sometimes it's called das kedoshim, not knowledge of holy things, but the way the Ralbag explains it is like abstract knowledge. Now, all knowledge is abstract, but there's abstraction from empirical data, and then there's abstraction from like abstractions, and that is like a level of das. So it rings true. Question is that the full truth? Is that how does that fit into everything? But definitely it does ring true.
Yeah, because it like when you were when you read some quotes about it, like that house, for example, of like the furnishings, I couldn't see easily how that clicks, like furnishing a house.
No, it doesn't, and
like
that just bothering me also.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, cool.
Yeah. Alrighty, I think that's good for tonight, and hopefully next time we have shiur, I will be in New York and not stuck here from the snow. All right, guys, nice. It's nice being back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you.